we'll go over because ah, the joys. I have not felt this way in quite some time. Michigan 45, Ohio State a puny little 23. And boy, does that feel great to say. In a game which did not start out great, Ohio State to start the game off goes right down the field, scores, and then Michigan gets points on their first drive. They were uh, kind of kind of the story and for a good first probably 15 like first quarter and a half where they'd have a good drive going, then they'd fall behind the sticks and they couldn't get keep up, and then they but got points on that first drive. To the defense's credit, they made plays, they got stops when they had to, and it was and then Ohio State, after Michigan's first drive, goes down. Michigan, they're to the defense's credit, they hold them to three, so it's 10-3. And after exchanging a couple of punts, and then on a 3rd and 9, where it really felt like the game was kind of teetering in Ohio State's favor, and it felt a little bit of, oh boy, here we go again, as a Michigan fan, that we've seen this song and dance before, that it's just going to be a long day if you're a Michigan fan. JJ McCarthy, with three Ohio State defenders in his face, gets Cornelius Johnson on a hitch route, house call, 69 yards. Nice.
Giggity.
And then Ohio State goes down, kicks another field goal, which something that I said in the preview is they got to find ways to force Ohio State to kick field goals in the red zone. They did. And then the next drive, Michigan hits Cornelius Johnson again on a beautiful double move. I think that Ohio State defensive back is still laying on the field from the ankle breaker that Cornelius put on him. And Michigan's up 17-13. Ohio
Well,
State goes down and scores 2017, and then that's halftime. And out of the gate, Michigan got the ball out of the gate, and uh, and back to it is to start the game. Blake Corum, who I think a lot of people thought he was going to try to give it a go, gets hurt on his first touch of the game. Didn't play the rest of the game. Donovan Edwards had a club on his hand. Sounds like he had a broken thumb, and he was, depending on what was going to happen, is he was going to get surgery. I don't think he's getting surgery anymore,
no,
and
not
he
in.
played well. And to Ohio State's credit, they did a pretty good job of stopping the run early on, where Michigan was very limited. It was 2-3 yards a carry. And to Michigan's credit, though, they didn't abandon it. Where in previous years they would have been like, "Oh boy, this panic time! Hit the panic button. We got to start throwing, 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 throwing." They didn't
Mhm.
do that. They stuck with it. They did it. They ran the ball effectively enough to where Ohio State had to respect it, and that's where you saw the play action, because out of the second half gate, you saw Michigan go over the top to Colston Loveland, the freshman out of Idaho, to take the lead. And after that, Michigan never looked back. They had a good drive, a long 7.5 minute drive to start the fourth that ended with a JJ McCarthy run, which,
Mhm.
to Michigan's credit, it was a outstanding second half adjustments on the offensive side of the ball, where they didn't run JJ a lot. They didn't use his legs for most of this year. I think they did right away just so they had something of it on tape for defenses to prepare for, but they did a good job of not really utilizing it. And
Mhm.
then in the second half, so they weren't able to adjust. Ohio State wasn't able to adjust to it. Is that was when they really cut him loose with his legs, and he made plays. He extended some drive. He had the touchdown, and then it was the Donovan Edwards show. 75 yards and 85-yard runs in the fourth quarter to put the game away. I was jumping up and down with excitement, and watching Ohio State just melt like butter, watching that fan base on social media just melt like butter, like, oh, we got to fire Ryan Day. Oh, Jim Knowles is toast. And I also enjoy this too because last, even, yes, Michigan won last year and it was great, but all the Ohio State fans were saying, oh, it's 1 year, it was lucky,
Mhm.
you guys got to come to our house next year, and that's not going to happen. That's not going to fly. technically you're right. We beat your ass even worse. They bring in this D coordinator who is designed to beat Michigan. Well, Donovan Edwards is still running. Cornelius Johnson is still running. And then, you get their coaches. Oh, it's been since 2018 the last time they had to play here. Let's show them who's boss. And that crowd was hostile. Like, I was watching the Big Noon Kickoff show and Game Day, and they did the game or the shows inside the stadium, and like 45 minutes before the game, the stadium was completely full. Like there was not an empty seat. You could just feel the buzz, and like just sitting there waiting for that game to start. Like I was just looking at my watch, and I'm like, can this game start already? Like I'm just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. Game starts, and watching these Ohio State fans melt. And Coach Harbaugh last year was saying, some people are born on third and thought they hit a triple. They didn't. Now Ohio State fans are saying it. How funny is that? And oh, they've been talking, they've been running their mouths, all this. We're shutting them up today. No, no, you're not.
Mhm. Well, and the crazy part is not even just let's take these last 2 seasons for Ohio State in a nutshell right now. This is becoming the Ohio State shit talking hour, but it is what it is. CJ Stroud got on the mic and he goes, "My legacy is I never beat this team. I never won the big game. I have to live with that. I put up all these yards, but they're just empty wins." And he's like, "I have to live with that." And then I'm thinking this, and I'm like, "Holy shit! His best win is a Rose Bowl game against Utah, who was out their top 5 corners and had wide receivers playing in the secondary last year. Wide receivers playing in the secondary. Beating Penn State doesn't count anymore because they're the worst 9-3, 10-2 team in the country because they always get their ass kicked by Michigan, Ohio State, and they just should beat everyone else. But I'm thinking it's incredible for the amount of yards and touchdowns he's put up over these last couple of years. His legacy is going to be this. He never won a big game because they also lost at home to Oregon 2 years ago, and he lost to Michigan twice. And it's just Michigan, they did it in the most Jim Harbaugh way of all time. They don't talk. They don't do anything funny to their helmets this week of practice. They don't take out the letter O around their whole campus or anything else like that. They don't have. I don't know if Michigan has a clock where they say in 314 days we're playing Ohio State.
They
It's
They
or maybe
might have a clock. I know in their practice facility they do have a big board that says what are you doing to beat Ohio State today, and in their weight room. But other than that,
but
that's really
but
it.
but in what I'm saying is Michigan, they don't make it a big deal. It's or it's a big deal, but they don't like to throw it in your face like what Ohio State does as a program. And these fans, how they just want to sit back and they're almost obsessed with Michigan. It's almost unhealthy for Ohio State to be so invested on this one team. And I get it. This is the best rivalry in college football. It's one of the best rivalries in sports. I mean, for me, it's Michigan, Ohio State, it's Duke, Carolina, and then it's everything else. Because what makes these games so special, Dylan, is this: is you just have to say the 2 schools' names,
Yep.
and
And
people know. People know
legacies
that.
are on the line. Your jobs depend on if you beat Michigan or if you
If
beat
you're
Ohio State.
Ohio State, and
There's been plenty of coaches who have lost their jobs because they weren't able to beat the other. John Cooper won over 150 games at Ohio State. Two and He was like a 2-11 record, or there were a couple of ties in there, but he lost his job because he couldn't beat Michigan.
oh yeah, exactly. And now to your point, Ryan Day, he's in the last 2 regular seasons before this game on Saturday has lost 1 game or 2 games. And the only thing people can talk about, not all the 50-point games, Not the record-breaking offense. Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out of nowhere, Jackson Smith and Jigba, what he did last year. All these first-round wide receivers, they talk about how his team's got his ass kicked twice against Michigan. And then you hear fans in the stadium, "We want Urban. We want Urban."
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
I was at the post game show of Big Noon Kickoff. It
with
was
Big Noon.
you could hear it them chanting, "We want Urban," and then I'm scrolling Facebook yesterday. This guy from I think it was Cleveland.com talking about how they might try to go and try to talk Vrabel into going to Ohio State, pull him from the NFL.
Christ.
It's and you know I actually think Ryan Day is a really good coach. And the record speaks for itself. He's 45-5 in 4 seasons. I mean, he's put a bunch of guys in the NFL,
Mhm.
but he is the only record that Ohio State fans seem care about is
He's
he's
1 and 2,
1-2 against Michigan,
1 and 2. And,
and
if
he
I'm an Ohio also, Dylan, if I could just interject
yep,
real quick. I'm an Ohio State fan. Watching these Ryan Day teams, I agree with you. I think Ryan Day is a good coach, and he's got a good offensive staff around him. He's putting guys in the NFL. But you look at this Ohio State team since he's taken over in 2019, and kind of like Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, it has steadily gotten worse and worse and worse every single year as a team. And look at that offensive line and that defensive line he had in 2019. How many NFL players were on there? J.K. Dobbins was rushing for 2,000 yards. And I get it, they had a lot of injuries this year to the running game for Ohio State, but their defense hasn't been the same over these last 2 years. And Michigan's kicked their ass. They put up 43.5 points in both games. I mean, if you average it out, it's 43.5 points. And if I'm an Ohio State fan, that's the one thing that concerns me is we're not as strong as we were in the middle with our offensive line and our defensive line with Urban as we are with Ryan Day. And what is Jim Harbaugh? What is his team? What do they always have? A great running game with a salty offensive line and a front seven that is hellacious. And if Ryan Day doesn't correct that and his coaching staff doesn't correct that, it could be a long couple of years um, with this rivalry game. And I'm not saying Michigan's going to go on a stretch of winning 10 in a row,
I hope
but
so.
they could. But it very well could be a 7-3, 8-2 split if Ohio State can't figure this out, which is improving this defense because it's gotten worse and worse and worse every single year. And with the way Michigan's running the ball and what they won the Joe Moore Award last year, who knows? They might win it again this year.
They should.
Uh, I mean, they're going to be up there. Georgia's got it. Georgia's got a good, you know, good pitch for that too. But now Michigan can walk into any 17, 18-year-old house in this country and say, "Hey, look what we've done to this team these last 2 years, and look what we've done to every team we've played." Yeah, we're gonna go here, and we're not gonna go over to you, boys in Columbus. You can have all the receivers you want, but when we're kicking your ass and we have the possession for 35 minutes a game, we're scoring touchdowns. And when your offensive line can't block our front seven, you're not gonna catch the ball, bro.
Yeah. Well, and I think Joel Klatt talked about this on his podcast today. That and it's true is that Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, if you look just on paper, like what their numbers are as far as in the running game, yeah, it stacks up there because I mean they have some extremely talented back in Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, a couple of freshmen that look like they're going to be studs, but they don't have an identity. Where you look at Michigan's run game, it is pin and pull, A gap, it is power. They have an identity of what they want to do in the run game where Ohio State just kind of runs plays almost.
Yeah,
And the other part too is with Michigan, their defense is they are built to beat Ohio State where they have two standing ends. Their D tackle is or their nose tackle is just an absolute animal who just eats blocks, which is basically what he has to do. He might not show it. The I can't even think of 55 Mason Graham. I want to say that's his name. Uh, is and he's a freshman and who just a former wrestler made plays. Braden McGregor made a bunch of plays out on the edge that saved that he could have had a pick six. He knocked down a couple of passes that Ohio State tried on swing passes didn't that could have gone for a long way. And then their linebackers, they are very, they're almost like all hybrid positions where they can play safety because there were a couple of times where there were some linebackers matched up on receivers and their Michigan's linebackers held their own.
Hmm.
And then I you can't say enough about the secondary. Will Johnson did a great job on Marvin Harrison. I mean, Marvin Harrison still had 100 and some yards, but I mean, you didn't see the explosive plays that you're used to. I mean, there were a couple of plays where it was like there's nothing you can do to defend that at all. And then Mike Sanders still with the play of the game on that third down where and I watched that play back today. The the ground he covered, which also I think you can give credit to the Michigan pass rush because Stroud had to kind of throw that off his back foot and it sailed in the air a little bit longer
Hmm.
he wanted to, which allowed Sanders still, who was playing receiver a year ago and is probably their best tackler out in space. I don't think I've seen him miss an open field tackle at all this year, which has given me like some Jordan Lewis vibes. And they it's just an incredible turnaround from where people wanted Harbaugh fired 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And Mason Graham, yep, freshman from California. Harbaugh referred to him as a gift from the football gods early in the year. And they he looked in the mirror, he got himself right, and you can see that this team is a reflection of Jim Harbaugh of how nasty, much they stay in the fight. They aren't going to get scared, they're not going to get intimidated, they're not going to back down. They're going to if you punch us, we're going to punch back. And they just kept landing punches and punches and then able to land the knockout punches which turned into the interceptions and then the two long runs by Edwards. And you could tell just by watching the locker room and Harbaugh after the game where he was going to get interviewed by Tom Rinaldi and he said, "No, you don't interview me. It wasn't me that won. It was he went and grabbed JJ and then he went and grabbed Mike Sanders still to go get interviewed because those are the guys that play." And then he runs up to the locker room and was the first one up there and went and hugged every single player. And then as the last couple got in, they carried him in and he had his doing his fist pump. And then after when he was doing his post game press conference, Mike Sanders still came in and said, "This guy right here." He's like, "Oh no, it's this guy." And then they hug each other, tell him they love him. And this team just they love each other, they believe in one another, and it's proven that this team they're and just the way they carry themselves too is because after the game, JJ McCarthy was talking about how the job's not finished. Our goals are bigger than just beating Ohio State. This was a nice win, but we're on to Purdue. And I'm just so happy. I haven't stopped
Hmm.
smiling since Saturday.